Welcome to another episode on the Fearless Femme podcast with your host, Becky Jane Stevenson, women's identity and confidence mentor. In this episode, I want to talk about fearlessness. And this episode was inspired today, actually, by some feedback from a wonderful human I'm connected with on socials. So there's this thing that many entrepreneurs and business owners do on social media where they ask their audience to describe them with just one word. And this is a post that I've done a couple of times over the years, and the feedback is always very similar. And I absolutely adore the people who watch my journey over the last few years, and the compliments that I receive, they mean everything to me, and they definitely make me feel very warm and fuzzy. But many of the comments that I receive, many of the words that people use to describe me, there is a common theme with them. Strength, fearlessness, unapologetic, bold, fiery, badassy. And there's no surprise, because that typically is how I show up, and it is connected very much to my personal brand. But I want to talk about the number one top spot, the number one word that people often use to describe me, and that's fearless. And the truth is, there is nobody out there in the world that is truly 100% fearless. If we didn't have fear, it would be a very different world out there. Fear is connected to anxiety. Anxiety is a very normal function of the brain. We need it. It keeps us safe, right? So we all feel fear. The difference is what we do with it. How we allow fear to sway decisions, how we allow fear to kind of dictate the choices that we make in life, or dictate what we do in life, how we show up, how we allow ourselves to be seen, how we allow ourselves to be heard. And there's a very specific reason why a lot of people attach the word fearless or fearlessness to my brand or to myself as a person. And it isn't something that is intrinsically inbuilt for one person or another, and one person has a level of fearlessness and another person doesn't. I think there is this belief, and it's the same with confidence, right? A lot of people believe that confidence is a personality trait, something you're born with and something you aren't born with. The thing is, just like confidence, it is a muscle. It is something that, we can't go to the gym just once and walk away as a bodybuilder. Your confidence needs regular maintenance. It needs to be nurtured and grown. And it's the same with having or developing this level of fearlessness, is feeling the fear, sitting with that fear, creating space for that fear, kind of listening to it. What is it telling you? And making your decision for yourself instead of allowing fear to drive it. And being bold, unapologetic, fearless isn't something that I naturally had. It's not something that I've had all of my life. It's something that's had to be cultivated. Being unapologetic has had to be nurtured. And there's a very specific reason why I've been able to do that. And I'm kind of going to dig into a little bit on this podcast. And it is a personal journey of mine. It's not really attached to what I do within my business. Like, in some ways it will be, but it is something that's very personal to me that I want to share with you all, because I think when you hear it and you kind of consider some of the things that I've said on this episode, it'll give you the opportunity to reflect for yourself, to recognize those moments where you might have felt fear, but you still allowed yourself to move forward despite it. So the reason fearlessness and being my unapologetic self, and that can mean something different for everybody, but being unapologetic for me is just being who I want to be in the world without feeling like I have to conform to anybody else's idea of who I should be, how I should dress, how I should talk, what I should be doing. I allow myself the ultimate authority to be that decision maker in my life. And that to me is being unapologetic. It's not being sorry for how I show up in the world. It's not being sorry for anything that I've been through. It's not being sorry for going a different way when everybody else is telling me that that's the wrong way and this is the right way. You know, being unapologetic is going to be subjective to everybody. It's going to be subjective to each and every one of you, depending on how you want to see that. And the same with fearlessness. Fearlessness isn't about moving forward and not feeling fear. It's about sitting with that fear and, again, not allowing it to dictate to your choices and where you want to be in your life, what you want to create, what you want to experience, what you want for yourself. And as I said earlier, it's something that I've had to cultivate over the years. And this level of, quote, fearlessness and unapologeticness only really came about, I guess, late 2018, early 2019. So we're only talking 5 years, and 5 years might sound a lot, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not. So I was well into my 30s before, I'm really showing my age now. I was into my 30s before I started kind of nurturing this side of myself. And the reason that it came about was in 2018, I experienced a emotional breakdown. So I was putting so much on my plate, putting myself under so much pressure and sacrificing a lot. I wasn't taking care of myself. I was taking care of everybody else. And there were a few things in my personal life that was exceptionally stressful. So taking care of me just was not something that I thought was on the table. So I burnt out in a big way. And part of that burnout brought with it this idea that I hadn't gotten to know myself. I'd become mum. I was in relationships. I'd had some really poor relationships in the past, but I'd never really given myself the chance to get to know myself, who I was about, you know, what I enjoyed, what I didn't, what my deal breakers were, what my values were. Like, heck, 10 years ago, I didn't have a clue what personal values were. I didn't know what self-concept was. So I've been on a huge transformational journey, as cliches as that might sound, but it's absolutely true. So in 2018, after this burnout phase, it really did a number on my emotional wellness and my mental wellness. And I was in a depressive episode. And it took time for me to work through all of that and to recover and reestablish balance and heal what needed to be healed and give myself the space to really explore where it was all coming from. Now, one of my other diagnoses, some of you may be aware, some of you who are new to me, I was diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder in 2015. And back then, for a number of years, it was quite intense. So for those of you who don't really know much about OCD and believe it's to do with cleaning and germs and symmetry or kind of rituals like having to lock a door so many times, it's so much deeper than that. For those of you that do understand OCD, you will know that OCD is based around what are known as intrusive thoughts. So thoughts that you just don't want. They can be weird, they can be unhinged, they can be depraved, they can be weird. They can be like you are in a walking nightmare. And that's what happened with me. So I won't get into the nitty-gritty. I do have a book that I'm going to be re-releasing soon for the second edition, which documents my personal journey through the absolute hell of my life. But without it, I wouldn't be able to show up as this fearless persona and unapologetic. And that's because back then, between 2015 and 2018, I was in what I considered my own personal hell. And now I see it as it really was a breakdown to break through. Again, a really cliched way of seeing it. We see this phrase thrown around quite a lot. But it really was for me, because everything had to be burned to the ground. Everything had to be stripped away. I literally hit rock bottom, like the bottom of the barrel, through those 3 years. And for me, when you battle against your own mind like that, and I was experiencing the OCD thoughts, which were absolutely terrifying at the time, when I started to work against that, when I started to disobey those thoughts and stop engaging in compulsions and ruminating and, overthinking and trying to figure stuff out and reach certainties and all the rest of it, when I chose to disobey all of that, when I chose to answer the thoughts back with attitude, just allow those thoughts to be there and say, okay, I hear you. I hear this thought, but I'm not going to do, or I don't want to do whatever these thoughts were suggesting, whatever they were telling me, I wasn't going to give in and play along. So I would invite the thoughts to just come along and allow them to be there. And it took so much work. There was a lot of anxiety, a lot of fight or flight going on, a lot of hypervigilance and all the rest of it that I had to work through. But the more that I disobeyed these thoughts, the more that I answered them back with an attitude, the more that I gave space for my mind to do what it needed to do without it ever meaning anything about who I was, or without it meaning anything about my identity or what value or worth I had in the world. The more that this fearlessness kind of started building within me, and that's how I began to cultivate it, because I'm now of a personal belief for me that when you've been to the darkest depths of your own mind, there's nothing really that's going to scare you quite as much. And I have been to some pretty dark places in the past, and when you've come face to face with that, everything else just seems like it pales in comparison. So because of that, I know I faced some of my darkest truths, I've faced some of my darkest stuff, I've faced just how deep and dark my mind can get, and I've healed from that, and I've been able to accept that our minds just... we have 70,000 plus thoughts a day. We're not aware of them all. And we all have some very weird thoughts sometimes. But because of that, because I chose to see it that way, I chose to say, do you know what? I've faced, showing up on a live video. Hell, I've faced worse than that in my own head. If a troll shows up on my content on social media, on TikTok, even this podcast, there's no fear factor for me, because there's something empowering about facing your darkest truths, about allowing your mind to do what it needs to do and not buying into the whole narrative of what it's doing. And that's what allowed me to build up this fearlessness that people see now, that people describe me as. So it's not that I don't feel fear, I absolutely do. And it's usually when I'm kind of taking a leap of faith. OCD rides and anxiety rides off needing certainty, right? So stepping forward without a certainty, especially when it's in your business and you want to grow or you want to scale or you want to do something new or increase your prices, put a big offer out there or put yourself out there more and start being seen more, it's always going to come with a fear factor because it's something you've never done before. And this is something that I drive home with my clients within my community, is it's not the confidence that allows us to do the things that we do. Confidence is the byproduct of having courage. So if you have the courage to face a fear, if you have the courage to move forward even though you don't have a certainty of an outcome, if you can have the courage to do that, you build the confidence. The confidence is the byproduct because you chose to be with yourself. You chose to allow fear to walk alongside you but not influence your decision. And that plays a lot into like the self-sabotage that we can get into, especially when we're growing and we're evolving and we're transforming. When we transform, we're literally stripping away the versions of ourselves that we've been, that at the time we needed, at the time we were where we were meant to be, but we outgrow that version and it's time for more growth. It's time to move beyond that ceiling. And with that comes a level of fear because we don't know who we're going to be at the other side of it. So it really does require you to sit with that fear, to sit with the potential self-sabotage that crops up, to still trust in yourself, but also make space for the emotions that you're feeling, make space for the thoughts that crop up. But again, not allowing them to dictate which step you take next. You can invite them along. These emotions and this fear aren't coming up to say, best not do that, best not rock the boat. You know, all that's really happening there is we have a fear. As our current version, we feel safe. And safety is easier. Safety is known. So there is a secondary gain to safety. When we choose to step over that line and trust and go forward without certainty, your brain has no evidence that it's going to work out. So it is automatically going to tell you that it's not safe and it's better to stay where you are. But how are you going to know if it's safe or not unless you take that step? How can your brain and your mind and your body learn that this new level is safe also unless you take that leap? So those are the questions I want to leave you with. Those are the things that I'd love for you to think about. And please do drop a comment. Either drop a comment or drop me a message, or reach out. Let me know what came up for you when you asked yourself those questions. And I look forward to bringing you episode number 3.